everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of Movie Crusaders. My name's Sean Wasserkrug, and today we're doing another end-of-the-year massive review dump. This is part 2. Part 1 I came out a couple days ago where I reviewed 5 movies that I had recently watched were recently either came out or came out in the last 2 months. This is now the second coming of 5 more movies that have come out here recently. Like I said on the previous episode, there's just so many movies, and there's just not enough time in the day for me to do individual videos for every single film that's come out. Plus, it takes a lot of time to edit and upload and all that. So I'm now condensing them to kind of massive reviews where I'm reviewing 5 a video just so I can try to get as many of them done for you guys as I can by year's end. And this is part 2. I am currently working on watching enough for part 3, so there will probably be at least another one of those by year's end. But these are the 5 movies that we are talking about on this episode, and that is Netflix's Power of the Dog, Amazon's Being the Ricardos, Disney Plus's Encanto, Netflix's Don't Look Up, and Disney Plus's Home Sweet Home Alone. First, we're going to start with Power of the Dog. I heard some strong word of mouth coming into this film. I've heard potential Oscar nominations for Benedict Cumberbatch, Kirsten Dunst, Jesse Plemons, potentially a Best Picture nomination as well. So there was a lot going into this film that I was prepared for, but I also knew that this movie was probably going to be more of a slow burn, probably not an exciting film by any means. Like most Oscar films, they tend to be more slow burns than anything else, but if the performances and the story is there, I don't care how slow it is, because if you can put me in this world with these characters, that's all that matters. With Power of the Dog, the plot of it basically is charismatic rancher Phil Burbank, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, inspires fear and awe in those around him. When his brother brings home a new wife and her new son, Phil torments them until he finds himself exposed to the possibility of love. Yeah, that's definitely a weird way to describe this film, but it is kind of a little on the nose in terms of describing it. Like I said, Benedict Cumberbatch plays Phil Burbank. In terms of Benedict's performance, I think he does put on a Oscar nomination performance. I don't know if necessarily he's going to win for it, but he puts on a great performance as Phil. He has this aura around him where he's kind of like almost like a tiger. Beautiful, majestic, you want to pet him, he'll come up to you acting all playful, and then as soon as you go to pet him, he'll bite your arm off. And that's kind of this stigma that Benedict Cumberbatch has brought to the Phil character, where he'll draw you in with like his sly grin or conversation, and then he will just cut at you with some words that'll just bring you down into pieces. But he does it in such a great way that you don't outright hate the character of Phil. You just know that Phil's gone through a lot of stuff. He puts up with a lot of stuff, and he's just a no-nonsense BS kind of guy. So when Jesse Plemons, or his brother George, played by Jesse Plemons, kind of feels like he's pulling away from his brother a little bit, and then he meets up and eventually marries Kirsten Dunst's Rose Gordon, who Rose is from. Her previous husband committed suicide. So he thinks that Rose is basically hooking her hooks into George for their money, because they're very, very prosperous ranchers. Phil definitely gives her a very, very hard time. Plus, her son Peter, played by Cody Smith-McPhee, is very I forgot the term. I think he calls him Miss Nancy, because he's very skinny. He's kind of feminine. Basically, he looks at him as kind of a wussy kind of thing. So he kind of basically treats them very negatively for the most part. Mostly Rose, more so than Peter, because halfway through the film, he starts to develop this relationship with Peter, and they start to kind of learn more and more about themselves. You start to kind of unravel why Phil is the way he is, and you also start to kind of learn more and more about Peter, because he's a very closed off, kind of weird kid, but you don't quite know where this is going. You don't know if we're going down a Brokeback Mountain situation, or if it's something a lot more sinister, or it's just a film with a bunch of weird characters. The one of the highlights of this film is definitely the cinematography. The way director Jan Campion shot this film is gorgeous. Every scenery shot looks amazing. I'm not a huge Western fan, but I definitely love the visuals of how this film looked. Jesse Plemons, I love Jesse Plemons, but he does not get a whole lot to do in this film. He's in a good chunk of probably the first half hour, and then after that he's relatively non-existent. Like, you'll see him in the background, but he's really kind of pushed to the side as the story focuses more on Phil and Peter, which is a bummer because I really, really like Jesse Plemons. I just wish he would have had more to do. Also, didn't know she was in the film, but Thomasin McKenzie, who you all know I'm a huge, huge fan of ever since I saw her in Jojo Rabbit and oh god, it's this other film with Ben Foster. It's not Without a Trace, but I'm blanking on the film. But anyway, she's in the film. Didn't realize she was in it, and she's also kind of utterly wasted in this film. And I love her, and I thought her performance earlier this year in Last Night in Soho was pretty great. So when I noticed that Thomasin was in this film, and her character is really not that important of a character, to me that kind of knocked it down a little bit. I feel like with someone of the caliber of Thomasin McKenzie, you really need to utilize her more and use her to her fullest potential. And I felt like with Jesse Plemons and her, they're both just underutilized in their roles in this film. Kirsten Dunst as Rose, her character, it's frustrating. Like she's, I think she overplays the character a little too much in this movie because she's playing this very hesitant, almost like a scared bunny, which that is a, kind of a running theme in this film, scared bunny rabbits. But she's really kind of playing the scared bunny, especially around Phil. And outside of Phil just kind of talking down to her, she basically acts like she's this abusive woman to Phil, like Phil's physically abused her in some way. That's never been the case, but he does know how to cut her down to her core. But the way Kirsten Dunst plays this role, I was not a fan of it. I think she just overplayed it way, way too much. When she does the more, I guess, more calmer moments of the Rose character, I think she does a really good job. But when she tries to act like she's in fear of Phil, or she kind of is like this drunk slouch in later on in the film, I think she just overplays her hand, and it really kind of shows Kirsten Dunst's lack of acting ability. Not that she's not a great actress, but compared to the likes of Benedict and Jesse and the rest of the cast, it really kind of shows. So I was kind of shocked to hear that she was getting she's nomination buzz for this film, because I really didn't care for her character. Cody Smith-McPhee, he's the enigma of this film, because you're watching his entry in this film and he's okay, and as the film grows, his performance starts getting gradually and gradually better and better all the way to the final end of the film. The ending itself, the twist, I think the twist works in a way, but I also didn't necessarily like the way the film ended. It was kind of just an abrupt end to the film that when the movie ended, I was just like, that's it? Like, we're going to end it on that note? But nonetheless, Power of the Dog, I think solid cast from Benedict Cumberbatch, great performance from him. Cody Smith-McPhee's great. Jesse Plemons and Thomasin McKenzie underused, and Kirsten Dunst, I think, overplays her hand too much on her performance. It looks great. The story is kind of a slow burn, but I think it's an interesting slow burn throughout the film. The end and the twist the twist I thought was clever, but I thought the ending was very abrupt. But I see a lot of people not really be into this because of the slow burner default and really not knowing where the film was going to go until the very end. So in my overall score, I'm going to give Power of the Dog a 63%. Going to my next film, it's going to be Amazon's Being the Ricardos. Everyone, I think everyone, no matter the age, all knows who I Love Lucy is. It's a staple in terms of TV history. And everyone knows who Lucille Ball is, and Desi Arnaz. And when I saw trailers for this film, I was greatly intrigued by it because I saw Nicole Kidman, I saw her portrayal of Lucille Ball, and I was really intrigued to see exactly how that performance was going to be, and especially also Javier Bardem as Desi Arnaz. But the big selling point for me on why I wanted to see this film is that it's written and directed by Aaron Sorkin. Aaron Sorkin is one of the best dialogue written, writers in Hollywood, up there with, Quentin Tarantino. But I would say Sorkin's probably a little bit better in terms of getting what you want out of it. Plus, Aaron Sorkin had my number one film of the year last year in the Trial of the Chicago 7, so I was real excited to see what he was going to bring. Cast-wise, this is a great cast. Like I said, you got Kidman, you got Bardem, J.K. Simmons plays William Frawley, you got Nina Ardina, or Arianda, sorry, who plays Vivian Vance, Tony Hale as Jess Oppenheimer, you got Aaliyah Sawkat, who plays Madeline Pugh, Jake Lacey as Bob Carroll. The list goes on and on. The cast for pretty much any Aaron Sorkin film is a great cast. The dialogue is snappy. The banter back and forth is great. And in terms of the performances, especially for Nicole Kidman and Javier Bardem, I think Javier, I loved his performance as Desi Arnaz. I felt like his performance was captivating the whole way through. Nicole Kidman, I think she plays it, Lucille Ball, a little more reserved, but I also still loved her performance nonetheless. The way, I think a lot of people, and at least I've seen this from people's reviews of this, I think they were expecting more than what this film was trying to offer. I think they were expecting more of how, I Love Lucy started and all this stuff about the show and everything like that. Or even more so about the actual events that are happening in this one particular week for these characters. Where I saw this film exactly how it was being portrayed was basically living in the life of these people for this 1 week. This 1 week in particular where literally a lot of things went wrong. You had Lucille basically be called a communist on the radio, and them trying to deal with what potentially could go wrong and what could happen in terms for the show and just their personal lives in general. You also have this tabloid releasing pictures of Javier Bardem's Desi with another woman. You also have this new director coming onto the show who just doesn't quite get how I Love Lucy is portrayed, at least to Lucy's eyes. On top of some other things as well, and a lot of this is just you kind of living in the world of these characters through this week, seeing what Lucille Ball and Desi and the rest of the cast have to go through on this very, very troubling and scary week as they describe it. What I also loved about this film is I love the way we saw the inner workings of the shows. One of my favorite Aaron Sorkin shows is Studio 60 with Matthew Perry and all them, where it's basically kind of his portrayal of almost like a Saturday Night Live show, but it's all about the backstage. It's just kind of like 30 Rock, but I think done way better in terms of Aaron Sorkin. And so I really like when we see the inner workings of a TV show and how the cast does table reads, and then they do certain different versions of the episode before they actually do it in front of the live studio audience. I loved seeing how Lucille Ball, how her physical eye is to the physical comedy, how she just visualizes everything in her brain to see if the comedy works, where Desi is more articulate with his comedy. He's a vocal comedian, while Lucille's more of the physical comedian. And watching these two kind of intertwine and work through their situations to try to make this episode better than how it was originally written, I thought was very, very clever. I love some of the one-on-one scenes with a lot of these characters, whether it's J.K. Simmons with Nicole Kidman, or Ali Sarkat with Nicole Kidman, Tony Hale with Javier Bardem. There's so many great one-on-one moments, so many great acting scenes in this, and dialogue. I really, really enjoyed this film. I know a lot of people I think a lot of people were expecting more out of this movie than what it was, but I really enjoyed what we saw. Now, when the movie ended, I kind of wish we would have gotten a little bit more, but for what we got, I thought it was actually a really good film. I would not be surprised if Nicole Kidman, Javier Bardem, heck, maybe even J.K. Simmons and Ali Sarkat could get nominations, maybe even Nina Arianda again as well. I think the entire main cast puts on a fantastic performance in this. The story could have been a little bit stronger. There's certain storyline elements that kind of fall flatter or kind of forgotten about halfway through the film, but for the most part, I really enjoyed this week that we lived with in these characters. To me, it was a very enjoyable film overall, and I think Aaron Sorkin wrote a very good film. And he's still kind of learning how to be a director. I think outside of this, I mean, it's no Chicago, Trial of the Chicago 7, but it was still a very good film overall. I'm going to give Being the Ricardos an 85%. Going to my next film, it is Disney Plus's Encanto. This movie came out around Thanksgiving. I didn't get to check it out, mainly because the trailers really didn't sell me on it. I wasn't super excited to go see it, but I knew I would watch it eventually. It got released on Disney Plus on Christmas Eve, so I watched it. In terms of the cast, I love Stephanie Beatrice. Many people, I know her from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which anyone who's a Brooklyn Nine-Nine fan, you guys know who Stephanie Beatrice is. She also had a great supporting performance in The Heights earlier this year, one of my favorite films of the year. She's playing the main character, Maribel. You also got John Leguizamo as Bruno. You got Diane Guerrero as Isabella. The cast goes on and on for this all like Latin American cast. I really kind of enjoyed this film. I had a lot of fun with this, which I'm not surprised. Most Disney films I enjoy to a certain level. The main plot of this story is you're following Maribel, who's a part of this magical family. Basically, something happens with their abuela that basically everyone that is born into this family, when they turn the age of 5, they get a special power. One has super strength, one can hear pretty much everything, one can control the weather with her emotions, another one is perfect in every way and can make flowers bloom, another one can heal you with their cooking. It goes on and on and on. But Maribel's different because when Maribel turned 5, she got no gift. She got no power. So she's kind of looked at as, I don't want to necessarily say the weakling, but kind of looked at as like the black sheep. Like she's very supportive of her family. She wants her family to strive and be great. And she's their biggest cheerleader. But she does feel left out because everyone in her family is special in some kind of way. And in her eyes, she's not. And a lot of the story is her kind of dealing with that, but she's also seeing something happening to their house, their kind of their castle in a sense, where she's starting to see some cracks in the foundation. She's seeing that the magic inside the house and from her family is starting to fade away, and she's trying to figure out a way to stop it and save her family, but no one believes her because they think she's just lashing out because she doesn't have any powers. And that's the main story going on with this film. Visually, this film looks gorgeous. This is a gorgeous film, but what else we have to expect from a Disney film? All Disney films look fantastic, but Encanto just looks gorgeous in every shot that they shoot. Voice cast is great. Like I said, Stephanie Beatrice is fantastic as Maribel. The rest of the cast is also great. It's fun. It's energetic. The music is done by Lin-Manuel Miranda, which after you hear the very, very first song in the film, you can see where it comes from. The very first song is incredibly fast and energetic, where Maribel is basically describing everyone in her family and their powers. You definitely need to watch it with subtitles. And the reason why I say that is because of Lin-Manuel Miranda. He's very boom, 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 boom. It's going to be hard for you to hear a little bit. It's a very catchy song. It's very upbeat, and the beat of Maribel singing is very fun and energetic. But she gets to one point where she's speed singing really, really fast, and you can barely understand anything she's saying, but the subtitles are there to help you way through. The rest of the music, I think, is very good as well. It doesn't quite hit the levels of the very, very first song, but it's a fun ride nonetheless. This is also one of the very few Disney films that has no, love story and no outright villain. It's just basically about Maribel trying to save her family from potentially the magic going out and trying to prove that she is important. So that's these whole subplots with a love, character to her to fall in love with, or like an outright villain is not there. It's also not really needed because it's a very well thought out story from beginning to end. Kind of like with Being the Ricardos, I do think the ending was just kind of, okay, boom, the end. I think the ending kind of got wrapped up in a little bow a little too nicely, a little too quickly. But at the end of the day, I really enjoyed this film. I thought this was a fun film. For anyone who was a little hesitant, like I was, on checking out this film because it just didn't wow you in terms of the trailers, I strongly recommend checking it out. Encanto was a fun ride, led by a great voice cast, fun singing, and it looks gorgeous. You will not be disappointed. It is currently available free on Disney Plus, and I believe it's also still in theaters as well. I'm going to give Encanto an 86%. Going to my next film, We are talking about Netflix's Don't Look Up. Now, for me, Adam McKay, who's the director of this film, I love Adam McKay as a comedian director with, Talladega Nights, Anchorman, the other guys. I really love his comedic approach on a lot of his comedies. But now he's kind of more in the satirical comedies with like The Big Short, Vice, and now this film with Don't Look Up. I'm not a huge fan of his satirical comedy. I feel like it's a little too on the nose. I feel like it's a little kind of above it all. Like he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, and he thinks everyone else is kind of dumb, and he kind of has to downplay characters, or like with Big Short, like he has to break the fourth wall to explain to you how things work because he thinks that the audience is not smart enough to figure it out, kind of thing. I'm not saying that for this movie. I'm talking about like Big Short and other movies that he does. I love his straight up comedies. His satirical films, not so much. So going into this one, I was a little hesitant because the trailer, I was excited to see the actors that were casted in this film, but I also saw how the trailer was portraying this movie, and I was a little kind of iffy on whether or not I was going to enjoy it. Cast-wise, you got a phenomenal cast. You got Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, Meryl Streep, Cate Blanchett, Rob Morgan, Jonah Hill, Tyler Perry, Mark Rylance, Timothy Chalamet, Ron Perlman. The list goes on and on. It's an all-star cast. Obviously, the main plot is you follow Jennifer Lawrence's Kate DiBiase and Leonardo DiCaprio's Dr. Randall Mindy, and basically Kate has discovered a comet that is on its way to hit Earth in about, I think it was like 6 months and 14 days, and it is basically dubbed a planet killer. So they basically, report to NASA, and they go to meet the president, played by Meryl Streep, to basically warn her about what's going on, and they basically kind of blow them off, saying that, hey, we're going to sit and assess, and, we're going to wait and see what happens instead of trying to act right away. And as the movie further and further goes, you're kind of seeing the way social media and kind of the climate of the way the real world is today working, where people care more about celebrities, relationships than real world, potential end of the world antics going on, and how they flip certain things to basically kind of go political with it and to make everyone else's agenda matter most and not worry about the actual big important issue, which is there's a comet coming to Earth that's going to destroy the planet. We should be focusing on this, not, the politics of it all, or whether or not certain, relationships are ending for celebrities and all that kind of stuff. It really overshadows the whole thing. I know a lot of people are going crazy about this film and think that's, one of the best comedies of the year. It's one of the best films of the year. This film was not for me. I hated this film. And it's not necessarily anything wrong with the cast. I don't blame the cast. I blame the script. I blame the writing of Adam McKay, which a lot of people think it's so clever and so, like, of today because of how everything was during the pandemic. But to me, that just made it frustrating and annoying, and it just made me hate everyone in this film. Leonardo DiCaprio's Randall Mindy. I think Leo does this something we really haven't seen him do a whole lot, which is very frantic and reserved, and kind of this very he basically needs Xanax a lot because he's very kind of I'm blanking on the word, but you guys seen the trailer, you know what I'm talking about. And his character grows because he's starting to become more confident in what he's talking about, but then they do something with his character that to me was just like, you didn't have to go down this route with this character. You didn't have to make this character make this decision or this choice, because it really kind of changes your mindset on the character overall. And you really liked the Leonardo DiCaprio character very much, and then they make this choice, and you're just like, well, now it's hard to kind of root for this character after they do this one particular thing. Jennifer Lawrence's Kate is incredibly manic and passionate and frustrated with how stupid everyone is, that she is over the top on her performance. But it works because, she's acting kind of probably the most realistic out of everyone in this film. Meryl Streep as President Orlin, she's basically playing female Donald Trump. She really is, which is just kind of an eye roll at this point. I'm really sick and tired of movies constantly trying to portray Trump, and I am not a big political guy by any means, but it's just kind of like it's such a like a cheap ploy now, kind of thing. And then probably to me one of the worst performances of the film. It's not because he performs it bad. I hate this performance so much, which is Jonah Hill, who plays Jason Orlin, who's her chief of staff and her son. I've never wanted to punch Jonah Hill in the face more than in this movie. And it's not because he's doing a good job. His character's dialogue is so cringy. It's so over the top bad that it's almost kind of a caricature, because no person is this kind of douchey. And you say that, and then I'm sure there's plenty of people like that in real life. But it's just every chance that Jonah Hill could do the wrong thing or say the wrong thing, he goes for it. And you would think that at least some characters or some people would just have at least some semblance of decorum or heart or just understanding that, like, hey, maybe this is kind of a mean thing to do. This character is just downright stupid and evil in every chance in every way that it's just unbelievable as a character. Cate Blanchett and Tyler Perry, they're basically playing, to me, like, oh god, Michael Strahan and, it's not Rita, Kelly Ripa. They're basically playing the versions of that. They're doing the best they can with that performance. I'm personally not a fan of it, but this movie overall... Oh yeah, Mark Rylance. Jesus Christ, Mark Rylance's performance. He's supposed to be like this Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates type of character, but to me, he just kind of comes off of like a perverted Mr. Rogers that's mentally challenged. It's not funny. It's not entertaining. It's just awkward and weird, and there's no entertainment value in it whatsoever. Timothée Chalamet is just basically playing Timothée Chalamet as a skater punk who is just kind of there. Doesn't really serve a purpose in this film except to just show up in the third act and be Timothée Chalamet, but his character's name is Yule. Ariana Grande is pointless in this film. Ron Perlman's pointless in this film. Rob Morgan's great as Teddy Oglethorpe, who's like one of like the Planet Defense team. He runs that. But this movie's basically Idiocracy for smart people, and I say that, and a lot of people are like, oh, I love Idiocracy. I hated Idiocracy. I hate movies that make people just so outlandishly stupid that by watching this film, I was just getting more and more annoyed and frustrated with this film that I was praying for the comet to hit the planet and end them all, because I could not stand watching these characters on screen anymore. It's unlikable. It's not funny. And you can come at me and say, like, well, that's the way the real world is. No, it's not. I can't believe that the real world is 100% like this film, because obviously Adam McKay is going to over-saturnize this film and try to make it more fantastical than it is with the way people are acting. But yes, there is a lot of realism in this film. I'm not going to say that it's not, because there are elements of this film where I'm like, yeah, I've seen that in real life. But you go to the movies to, yes, you want some realism in the films, because everything, in terms of realism is, adds or heightens to the performances, but you don't want this. And I hated this film. And when we get to the inevitable end of the film, I was like, thank God. But then you get, it keeps going, and it pushes further to like a mid-credit scene, and the mid-credit scene is just even more stupid. I hate this movie. I really absolutely despise this film. And it makes me to the point where I don't trust Adam McKay as a director anymore. Like I said, if he's gonna ever go back and do straight up comedies, now granted I know him and Will Ferrell's friendship is not quite there anymore, so the chances of him going back to doing those kind of comedies with Will Ferrell is probably dead and gone. But him making these kinds of films, I am not a fan. It's just not for me. I'm not saying that this movie's a bad movie, because there are some people out there who think this movie is fantastic and love this movie. More power to you if you like this kind of film. This film was not for me. I hated this movie. I hated the script. I hated the way the performances were. This is nothing against any of the actors or actresses in the film, but it's the performances that they had to do in this movie. I just hated the 2.5 hours that I had to, I think it was 2.5 hours, that I had to watch of this film. I can't get that time. 2 hours and 18 minutes. I can't get that time back, and I really wish I had just never seen this movie overall. So going to my score, I'm going to give Don't Look Up a 34%. It is not something that I would recommend. Just pretend this movie didn't exist. Unless you really, really like Adam McKay satirical stuff, then this is right up your alley, and you guys are probably going to love it. But I personally hated this film. Going to my last film, I watched this right after Don't Look Up, and the real question is why did I do this to myself? Apparently, I'm a masochist, and I just love to, make myself be in pain and misery, because my final one is Home Sweet Home Alone. I have heard nothing but horrifically awful things about this film, and you get to the point where you hear so much bad about a movie that you're like, it can't be that bad. Let's check it out. And it's one of those things where I don't know why I did this to myself. I must hate myself up to some extent because I shouldn't have watched this movie. This movie is hands down the worst movie of the year that I've seen. I love Home Alone. I even really love Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. Macaulay Culkin is great. Daniel Stern, Joe Pesci, Catherine O'Hara. I love those two films. They're holiday classics for me. I watch them over and over and over again on rewind through the holiday season, especially around Christmas time. This film, I remember seeing the trailer for it, and granted the trailer wasn't great, but there was 3 things that sold me on it. One, Ellie Kemper, who I love from The Office and Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. Rob Delaney, I think, is a very solid comedic actor. So having him a part of it was great. And then Archie Yates. I love Archie Yates from Jojo Rabbit. He was one of my favorite parts of Jojo Rabbit, where he plays Jojo's best friend. It's not Yogi. Yorkie. Yeah, he plays Yorkie. I loved this kid actor. So having those 3 in this movie, I was like, all right, this has got to be at least somewhat good. And then I heard the reviews. Now, granted, I didn't read them or anything like that, but I did hear one lingering thing about the movie that made it go, ooh, that's not going to be good. And so when I jumped into this film, I was like, well, maybe it's not that bad. It is 100% as bad as everyone says it is. It is atrocious, this film. Home Alone, the original Home Alone, and Home Alone 2, and heck, even Home Alone 3, 4, 5, whatever. The whole basis of this film is that the burglars are bad. They're trying to break into the house. The kid's kind of a jerk, but you like him enough to root for the kid to stop these burglars. That is the crust of the Home Alone franchise. Rinse, repeat, that's the movie. Home Sweet Home Alone tries to flip that and go, well, what if we cared about the burglars? And what if they're not really burglars? And that is literally the worst possible thing. And then, oh yeah, what if the kid is a little shit that you can't stand? And that formula, or that flip of the formula, is the ultimate downfall of Home Sweet Home Alone. Ellie Kemper, Rob Delaney, they basically play these two husband and wife who are about to lose their house. Rob Delaney is out of a job, so they're losing money, so they're going to have to sell their house in order to basically survive. But Rob Delaney has these old porcelain dolls that his mother left for him, and he finds out that one of the dolls is actually worth a lot of money. But during their open house, in comes Archie Yates' Max with his mom, who needs to use the bathroom. And literally the first scenes with Archie Yates as Max, this kid's an asshole. He's whiny, he's bitchy to his mom. He meets Rob Delaney, who's a total stranger, and he just immediately verbally talks shit to him, just talks rudely to an adult who did nothing wrong to him in the first place. Now, granted, Macaulay Culkin's Kevin McAllister, Kevin's a dick. Kevin is a dick, but here's the difference. Kevin is a little shit and an asshole because he's pushed to it by his family, by his brother Buzz, by his uncle. They all push him into acting out and being a huge jerk to everybody. But when he is removed from that family and he doesn't have them poking and prodding at him, Kevin is generally a good, caring kid that you would like and befriend. is pushed to being an asshole at the beginning of the films, and that's how he gets left home alone. Archie Yates' Max is just a dickhead. He's a jerk to everyone he meets. He tries to play sympathy to basically guilt trip you into liking him, but it doesn't work. It works in terms for the film because you have to, but it doesn't work in terms of the audience liking this kid. But thus, you know, he's rude to Rob Delaney's character, and Rob Delaney goes to try to find the doll, and he sees the doll's missing, and he thinks Archie Yates' Max character took it because of their interaction. So he basically, you know, you have the Home Alone story element where, you know, they're getting ready to go on a big trip to Tokyo and all this stuff. And here's the big difference, once again, that further proves that the Max character is just an asshole compared to Kevin, is with the whole house littered with kids and it's just, you know, this madhouse. In Home Alone, everyone's rude and mean and pushes and prods Kevin into lashing out. In Max's case, no one really cares about Max. No one messes with him. No one interacts with him. There's one weird line with his sister where his sister calls him a perv because he pushed her when she had a VR headset on, which, once again, some of the dialogue in this film is really, like, they're really trying to reach the adults and not the kids, and it just feels out of whack for this film. But no one really messes with Max in this movie. They just kind of let him kind of do his own thing, and then he just wants to, you know, peace and quiet, so he goes and hides in the garage and sleeps in one of the cars for the night, and that's how he gets left home alone. But once again, Ellie Kemper's Pam and Rob Delaney's Jeff, they are basically effectively trying to, and if, yes, they are breaking into Max's house, but A, they know where the key is, and B, they also know the security code. So they're going in basically to grab the doll and get out, but as they're going in, the way the dialogue of this film is, they really uses this dialogue that is so misconstrued, but it's also misconstrued to the point where it's like, why would you talk this way? Like, this is not a conversation that two normal people would say or have, but it's done in terms of the plot to have Max lash out at them. Thus, we get the film that we get, and where this is also the epitome of one of those movies where if everyone just stopped what they were doing and just talked to each other, this film wouldn't happen. Whereas, like I said, Home Alone 1 through 5, the main crux is these burglars are breaking into the house to steal stuff. The kid has to defend the house and defend themselves from these burglars. This is a movie where these are two parents who are just trying to save their house, save their kids and their family by getting their doll back from an asshole kid that they could have just talked to. And then this kid misunderstands what they're doing, thus the Home Alone film happens. But every time these antics and these Home Alone prank stunts happen, you just feel bad for Pam and Jeff, and you're not supposed to feel bad for the burglars who are getting pranked by the kid. And some of these pranks are just downright mean from Max, because once again, if these were criminals, mean bad guys, granted, the pranks that Max is doing are still really bad, but you don't have that compassion or that guilt for the characters like you do, like what you did with Daniel Stern and Joe Pesci. Plus, they sell it way funnier, but they're bad guys. So when they get, you know, hit in the face with an iron or a paint can, or their head gets lit on fire, it's funny because they're bad people. Pam and Jeff are not bad people, so when this stuff happens, you just feel bad for these characters. You never root for Max. There's never a point in this film where you want Max to win, or you want Max to beat Pam and Jeff, because Pam and Jeff are the focal point of this film. And the way this movie just keeps going, that by the time we get to the inevitable end, I'm not going to say what happens, but something happens, and you're just like, once again, you take the dialogue that they're saying, you're like, wait, so because of this, you wouldn't do this? That makes no damn sense. And then you get the inevitable ending, which also just makes no damn sense. And it's so weird and awkward, and everything that happens, that this movie is a train wreck. Not to mention the rest of the cast is really bad as well. I think the only character that actually is not necessarily bad is Aisling Bea, who plays Carol, Max's mom. But she's not given nearly as much to do as Catherine O'Hara does in the first two Home Alones. There's not this this buildup of the mom character, that you care about the mom character like you did in the first two Home Alones. Uncle Blake, played by Pete Holmes, is hands down one of the worst performances of the year. It's so nail on a chalkboard grading, like, annoying, that you could just mute him whenever you saw it. Chris Parnell is in the film for like one scene. He's completely wasted. Devin Rattray, for who plays Buzz in the first two films, he's brought in to basically kind of make it be a part of the same world as the Home Alone franchise. He name drops Kevin at one point. He's literally there to just connect the Home Alone franchises together and to basically say that Kevin McAllister is in this world, but Kevin McAllister obviously never shows up. Home Sweet Home Alone is hands down the worst film of the year that I've seen. Now, granted, there are probably some worse movies out there. I try to actively avoid these horrible films. That's why my review scores are not as low as they normally are for a lot of films, because I try to not watch the shitty movies. This one, though, for some reason, I hated myself the other night watching Don't Look Up and just decided, screw it, let's watch Home Sweet Home Alone. I regret my decision. I hate my decision, and I could not recommend this movie for anyone. It is dog shit to the nth degree, and that is why Home Sweet Home Alone gets a 14% from me, which is probably one of my lowest rated scores on the show, hands down. Don't waste an hour and a half watching this film. Pretend this movie never happened. If you want to watch Home Alone, go watch the first two, maybe even the third one, because Scarlett Johansson's in that as a young kid. But do not watch this movie. It is horrible, horrible, horrible film. But that is my 5 movies for part 2 of the massive review episode. If you guys enjoyed these reviews, hit that like, share, subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest reviews that pop up on the channel. Of course, don't forget to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Our latest episode for the Weekend Crusaders is going to be dropping here either today or tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that, as well as our Weekend Crusaders End of the Year episode, where we talk about and rank some of our best and least favorite films of the year that we talked about on the show. Like I said, I'm working on part 3 of this right now. I'm trying to watch at least 5 more movies to do another one of these. Like I said, the part 1 is out, as well as reviews for Matrix Resurrections and Spider-Man No Way Home. And then, of course, by the end of next week, we will also have Brian Michaels and myself will be back on to talk about our best and most surprising films of 2021, our worst and most disappointing films of 2021. Home Sweet Home Alone will definitely be on that list. And also our most anticipated films of 2022. So be on the lookout for all those videos. Yeah, until next time, in case I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.